Hello everyone. First of all, I'm Joyce Almerol Bayuna. I'm one of the reporters of this chapter 8, which is the sources of capital for entrepreneurs. So, I'll be the one to discuss the first topic, and later on, I'll be back for the last topic, which is the types of investors. So, let's start. But first, let's see what are the learning objectives of this chapter. So first is to differentiate between debt and equity as method of financing. Second is to examine commercial loans and social lending as sources of capital. Third is to review initial public offerings as source of capital. Fourth is to discuss private placements as an opportunity. Fifth is to study the market for venture capital and to review venture capitalists. And sixth is to discuss the importance of evaluating venture capitalists for a proper selections. And lastly is to examine the informal risk capital market. So let's begin. As you can see on the screen, according to William Somerset Maugham, an English playwright, novelist, and a short story writer, he said that money is like a sixth sense without which you cannot make complete use of the other five. What does it mean? As we all know, we have five senses. The sense of touch, sense of hearing, sense of smell, sense of taste, and the sense of smell. And he said that money is the sixth sense, which is without this money, we cannot completely use the other five. Just like in our financial situation, without an adequate income, half the possibilities of our life are shut down. Hindi mo matutustusan lahat ng pangangailangan mo kapag wala kang sapat na pera. So therefore, lahat tayo kailangan ng money. We have to accept that because money pay our all things that make our life possible, such as shelter, food, healthcare bills, and a good education. So, without money, hindi mo makukomplete use lahat ng ibang part of our living. So, now, anong connection nito sa topic na to? It is because we are referring to the sources of capital, at money is definitely involved. So, let's go for the search for capital. I'll be quick explain this one. So, pag isa kang entrepreneur planning a new venture, you have first to consider you have to think first the most important thing, which is where to find startup capital. Saan ka kukuha ng capital mo to start your new venture? So, but every entrepreneur, hindi sila aware sa mga numerous possibilities for funding exists. So, hindi naman porket meron ka ng sources of capital, but you have to consider also the possibilities na expectations na makukuha mo when it comes to funding. So, therefore, you have to understand not only the various sources of capital, but also the expectations and requirements in order to obtain or gain your capital from your sources. So, that's it. For example, yung mga sources of capital mo, commercial loans, public offerings, private placement, mga convertible debentures, venture capital, and informal risk capital. So, ito yung mga major type of financing na na-encounter natin when it comes to searching for capital. But, what exactly are they? What is the expected? Ano yung pag-isa kang entrepreneur? Ano yung mga expectations and requirements in applying for these funds? So, you have to think of that. Look at this figure or diagram. As you can see there, you notice that entrepreneurs have a number of sources of capital as their ventures develop. So, ito yung mga sources of capital mo. First source of your capital is your own money. Second one is family and friends, angels, seed capital, venture capital, banks and government programs, private placements, and IPOs. And kung mapapansin nyo dito, sa part na to, yung sources of capital, you can see, you can notice there that the level of risk and the stage of the firm's development impact the appropriate source financing for the entrepreneur ventures. Meaning to say, habang tumataas yung level ng sources of capital mo from owner's money hanggang sa IPOs, tumataas din yung risk level niyan. So kapag mataas yung pinagkuhanan mo ng capital, expected mo na mataas din yung risk. Now, what is debt financing and equity financing? Which financing is best for your business or company? When we say debt financing, it involves a payback of the funds plus a fee. Yung fee na yun yung interest for the use of the money. When we say equity financing, it involves the sale of some of the ownerships in the venture. So, debt financing, usually sa bangko yan nangyayari. Equity financing sa mismong company mo or business mo because you are going to sell one of your stocks or ownership. For better understanding, let's see this example. Yan. When we say debt financing, for example, papatayo ka ng company mo, mag-start ka ng company mo, then utang ka sa bangko ng $40,000. Yung $40,000 may interest rate na 10%. Ngayon, yung company mo, nagkaroon ka ng profit na 20,000. Ngayon, yung 10% na yun, ilalas ngayon sa profit mo na 20,000. Anong 10% nun? 2,000. 4,000. So, yung 4,000, yun, ilalas na ngayon sa 20,000. Ang magiging kita mo na ngayon is 16,000 na lang. That's debt financing. So, when we say equity financing, you are going to sell one of your ownership or your stake. For example, nagkaroon ka ng shareholders na tapos binenta mo sa kanya yung 20% ng stake mo. So, stake na 25% stocks. So, ngayon, kumita ka ng $20,000. Ngayon, yung 25% ng ownership mo is mapupunta kay shareholder. Ngayon, yung 25% na yun, mayroong 5,000. So, ililas mo siya sa profit mo. So, ang computation nun is $20,000 minus $5,000 equals $15,000 na lang. So, that's equity financing. You see the difference when you say debt financing, sa bangko yan, then sa equity financing sa mismong company mo. Sa mga kadalasan, mga new ventures, usually, ang financing na ginagamit nila is debt financing. So, debt financing is not a choice but a necessity. So, there are two types of this debt financing. Short-term borrowing. Pag may short-term borrowing, 1 year or less, ito required to obtain capital and is repaid off proceeds from sales. When we say long-term borrowing, 1 to 5 years to finance the purchase of property or equipment serving as collateral for the loans. So, yun. So, ito na yung sinasabi ko kanina, yung commercial banks. So, ang commercial banks, Ito yung most common sources of debt financing. So, kapag isa kang entrepreneur at ginamit mo ang commercial bank as your source of debt financing, you have to secure a bank loan. So, in order to have a secured bank loan, you have to consider the 5 common questions together with the descriptive commentaries. So, first question, what do you plan to do with the money? Saan mo pang gagamitan yung money na yung uutangin mo? So, pag nagka-create ka ng new ventures, you have to consider yung goals mo, yung objectives mo, planado dapat yan. Second, how much do you need? Ilan ang kakailanganin mo? Di pwedeng magkulang. So, dapat kompyutado mo din lahat ng kakailanganan mo. One at a time lang. Hindi pwedeng sumobra. Kasi one at a time ka lang magpa-bank loan. So, and next one is, when do you need it? Kailan mo to kailangan? So, kung may specific date ka, you have to consider that. Kung dapat, planado din yon. Kung kailan mo to kakailanganin. So, sa pang-apat naman is, how long will you need it? Gaano katagal mo to kakailanganin? And lastly is, how will you repay the loan? So, yung last question na yun, usually yun yung pinaka-importante. Kasi tatanungin ka niyan bago ka uutang, tatanungin muna nila, paano mo yung mababayaran? So, minsan tinatanong din nila kung may job ka ba, kung may mga property ka ba, because yung mga yon, minsan yun yung sa mga questions nila property, kasi kung may lote ka ba, kasi minsan yun yung deserve as the collateral sa loan mo. So, that's it. Banks are not the only source of debt financing. So, pwede ding long-term financing for a particular piece of equipment is obtainable from manufacturers. Also, new ventures can obtain short-term debt financing by negotiating extended credit terms with suppliers.
Hi guys, I'm Lovely Domingo Miranda and now I'm discussing the debt versus equity. So now let's proceed to the advantage and disadvantage of debt financing. Advantage: no relinquishment of ownership is required. More borrowing. Low interest rates reduce the opportunity of cost of borrowing. Disadvantage: regular interest payment is required. Cash flow problems can intensify because of payback responsibilities. Heavy use of debt can inhibit growth and development. Peer-to-peer lending or P2P, the practice of lending money to unrelated individuals or peers without going through a bank or another traditional financial institutions. Also known as a debt-based crowdfunding, this lending takes place online on peer-to-peer lending companies' website using various different lending platforms. Peer-to-peer lending's internet-based sites that pull money from investors willing to lend the capital and agreed-upon rates. Peer-to-peer lending charge fee for broking and servicing loans and collect penalties for late payments. Peer-to-peer lending potential dangers. Number 1, funding success rate. Funding success rate, more loans are difficult to complete, so the funding success rate could be questionable. Number 2, business plan disclosure. This business plan disclosure, the entrepreneur's business plan is now released to the public domain. Number 3, no ongoing counseling relationship. The entrepreneur does not receive any advice or gain experience from the lender, and there are no future rounds of lending or investments. 4, potential tax liability. There are tax implications for the borrowers and the lenders. 5, uncertain regulatory environment. The SEC continues to review these sites for the potential regulatory policies. Other debt financing sources. 1. Trade credit. Trade credit is a credit given by suppliers who sell goods on account. This credit is reflected on the entrepreneur's balance sheet as accounts payable, and in most cases, it must be paid in 30 to 90 days. Next, account receivable. Financing is short-term financing that involves either the pledge of receivable as collateral for a loan or sale of receivables. Next is factoring. Factoring is the sales of accounts receivable. Under this arrangement, the receivables are sold at discounted value to a factoring company. Next is finance companies are asset-based lenders that lend money against assets such as receivables, inventory, and equipment. Equity financing is the money invested in the venture with no legal obligation for entrepreneurs to repay the principal amount of the interest on it. The use of equity funding thus requires no repayment in the form of debt. Financial equity instruments which give investors a share of the ownership may include loan with warrants, provides the investor with the right to buy stocks at the fixed price at some future date. Next, convertible debentures are unsecured loans that can be converted into stock. Preferred stock is equity that gives investors a preferred place among the creditors in the event the venture is dissolved. Next, common stock is the most basic form of the ownership. Two major sources of equity capitals that can be raised through one, public offerings. Going public is a term used to refer a corporation raising capital through the sales of securities on the public markets. Advantage: size of capital amounts. Selling securities is one of the fastest ways to raise large sums of capital in a short period of time. Next is liquidity. The public market provides liquidity for the owner since they can readily sell their stocks. Next, value. The marketplace puts a value on the company's stock, which in turn allows value to be placed on the corporation. Image. The image of publicly traded corporation often is stronger in the eyes of suppliers, financiers, and customers. Disadvantage. Cost. The expense involved with the public offerings are significantly higher than for other sources of capital. Disclosure. Detailed disclosure of the company's affair must be made public. Requirements. The paperwork involved with SEC regulation as well as continuing performance information drain large amounts of time, energy, and money from management. Shareholder pressures. Management decisions are sometimes short-term in nature to maintain a good performance record for earnings and dividends to the shareholders. Private placements. It is regulation for the reports and statements required for selling stocks to private parties. Along with the company rules, the following are exemptions. Number 1. Rule 504 of Regulation D. Placements up to $1 million, no specific disclosure or information requirements, and no limits of the kind or types of purchase exit. 2. Rule 505 of Regulation D. Placements up to $5 million. The criteria of the public offering exemptions are somewhat more difficult to meet than those for the similar offerings. 3. Rule 506 of Regulation D. Placements in excess of $5 million. Sales can be made to no more than 35 mono-credit purchase and an unlimited number of accredited purchasers. Sophisticated investors are wealthy individuals who invest more or less regularly in new and early and late-stage ventures. They are knowledgeable about the technical and commercial opportunities and risks of the business in which they invest. 2. Crowdfunding. A recent financial phenomenon of the 21st century is the creation of the funding vehicle of vendors through the use of the general public. Crowdfunding model has three principal parts. 1. The entrepreneur who proposed the idea and or venture to be funded. 2. Individuals or group who support the idea. And 3. The moderating organizations that bring the parties together to launch the idea. Two distinct forms of crowdfunding. One is reward crowdfunding. The entrepreneur will seek a target amount of funding to launch a business concept without incurring debt or sacrificing equity. And two, equity crowdfunding, where the entrepreneur will share the equity in the venture, usually in its early stage, in exchange for the money pledged. Potential concerns that still exist with crowdfunding, such as reputation, IP protection, donor delusions, public fears. Reputations: reaching financial goals and successfully gathering substantial public supports but being unable to deliver on the venture could have negative impact. IP protections: concern about idea theft and protecting intellectual property. Donor delusions: if the same network of supporters is reached out to multiply times, they will eventually tire of necessary support. Public fear: without a proper regulatory framework, the likelihoods of or an abuse of funds is high. The venture capital market. Venture capitalists, professional investors who invest in business ventures, providing capital for startup, early stage, or expansion. Provide a full range of financial services for a new growing ventures, capital for startup and expansions, market research and strategy for business that do not have their own marketing departments, management consulting functions and management audit and evaluations, contacts with prospective customers, suppliers, and other important business people, assistance in negotiating technical agreements, help in establishing management and accounting controls, help in employee recruitment and development of employee agreements, help in risk management and the establishment of an effective insurance program, counseling and guidance in compliance with a myriad of government regulations. A number of major trends have occurred in venture capital over the last few years. First, the predominant investor class is changing from individuals, foundations, and families to pension institutions. Second, innovation has become more global and is no longer the exclusive domain of Silicon Valley and Route 108 in Boston. Third, funds are becoming more specialized and less homogeneous. Fourth, syndicate deals are emerging. Accompanying with specialization is a new form team system. Fifth, small startup investment have weakened over the last decade. Sixth, the industry has become more efficient and more responsive to the needs of the entrepreneur as a result of greater professionalism and greater competitions. Seventh, the third is toward a stronger legal environment. The heated competition for the venture capital in the recent years has resulted in a more sophisticated legal and contractual environment.
Hi everyone, my name is Narhaya Bikasangwan, reporter number 3 of Chapter 8 Sources of Capital for Entrepreneurs. Clearing out venture capital myth. Myth number 1. Venture capital firms want to own control of your company and tell you how to run a business. Ganito kasi yon. All partners have part ownership over the fund, but it is the venture capitalist firm that controls where the fund is invested. Myth number 2. Venture capitalists are satisfied with a reasonable return on investment. Actually, the National Bureau of Economic Research has stated that a 25% return on a venture capital investment is the average. Most venture capital returns will expect to at least receive this 25% return on investment. The venture capitalist's goal is to get at least 30 to 40% return on the investment over the period of their involvement in the investment. The company must follow an aggressive growth strategy kasi. Myth number 3. Venture capitalists are quick to invest. Yes, They are quick to invest, but they require little information before they make investments. Myth number 4, venture capitalists are interested in backing new ideas or high technology inventions. Management is a secondary consideration. Yes, that is the answer. Several studies have argued that companies backed by venture capitals growing fast. Their financial and operating results are more innovative, according to Gompers and Lerner 2004. Myth number 5, venture capitalists need only basic summary information before they make an investment. Venture capitalists have a set of criteria that they look and evaluate before making an investment. Here are the hindrances for a venture capitalist to not have partnership with you. Number 1 is an arrogant management team. Venture capitals do not look for a boastful team. They are looking ideally for executives who have successfully built businesses that have generated high returns for the investors. Number 2 is no defendable market position. Actually, marketing positioning is a very important part of marketing strategy since it determines to a large extent of what a business potential customers perceives of being offered to them. Positioning helps establish your products and services to identify within the eyes of the customers. Number 3 is excessive founder salaries. Number 4 is vulnerability of the founder. Number 4 is yesterday's news. Yesterday's news, maybe this pertains to yung bad record of the company. Next is ignorance of the competitive landscapes. And lastly is the unrealistic expectations. Before venture capitalists help you with your funds, they check first for your expectations. Venture capitalists spend a lot of time to look for the ingredients to success. They reduce the riskiness of the opportunities while trying to mitigate risk while producing big returns from their investments. Here is the venture capitalist system of evaluating products, services, and management. And we can see here in the table the stages of business, the expected annual return on investment by the venture capitals, and the expected increase on initial investment by venture capitalists. Here is the evaluation process of new venture capitals. First attribute is timing of entry. Level is pioneer. Pioneer means the first one to enter in this new industry. Second attribute is key success factor stability. It is a requirement necessary for success which will not change radically during the industry development. Number 3 attribute is educational capability. This is a considerable resources and skills available to overcome market ignorance through education. And 4 is lead time. It is an extended period for the first entrant prior to competitors entering the industry. Next to lead time is competitive rivalry. A company should be competitive because every company has its competitor. Next is entry wedge mimicry. Mimicry is synonymous for imitation. Considerable imitation of the mechanism used by other firms to enter this or any other industry, for example, is a franchise. Next is scope. A firm that spreads its resources across a wide spectrum of the market. Example is the segments of the market. And lastly is the industry-related competence.
A ako'y nagbabalik. Ngayon, ang i-discuss ko is yung types of angel investors. So, madaming klase ng angel of investors. So, pwedeng mayroong corporate angels, mga entrepreneurial angels, enthusiast angels, micromanagement angels, professional angels. Ngayon, so when we say corporate angels usually mga senior managers na to at Fortune of 1,000 corporations who have been laid off with generous severances or have taken in early retirement. So mga usually mga senior managers na sila. When we say entrepreneurial angels naman, most of these individuals own and operate highly successful business. So, minsan, ay sila kadalasan yung naghahandle ng mga successful businesses or big companies. So, itong investors na to is always take a seat on the board of directors. So, usually mga board of directors sila rarely assume management duties. See? When we say enthusiast angels, ito naman yung mga like to be involved in deals. Sila yung kadalasan yung mga investor na may interest talaga sa business na yun. So, most enthusiast angels are age 65 or older. So, mga senior citizen na tayo. Independently wealthy, mayayaman sila from success in business. They started and have abbreviated work schedule. So, part ng hobby nila yung pag-i-invest. So, play no role in management and really seek to. So, kadalasan ng mga investor na to is usually mga hindi sila part ng management pero malaki yung part nila sa investment. When we say micromanagement angels, ito yung mga seryosong very serious sa investment nila. So, majority attain wealth through their own efforts. Attempts to impose the tactics that work for them on their portfolio companies and usually demand a seat on the board of directors. So, micromanagement angels is also mga board of directors sila. So, malaki yung malaki yung ownership nila sa company mo. Sa isang company. And next one is the professional angels. So, ang professional angels refers to the investors' occupations. Like to invest in companies that offer a product or service which they have some experience. So, yung mga investors na ito is usually experience sila and they know nasa field nila yung product line nyo or yung service line nyo. For examples, yung isang hospital, mga angel investors mo is usually mga doctors, diba? Part silang mga board of directors. Ayan. Ito. Angel stats. Typical deal size, dollar kasi ito eh. Pag in dollar to $50,000 to $600,000. Typical recipients, startup firms, mga startup firms. Cash out time frame 5 to 7 years. Expected return 35% to 50% a year. So, ito yung dividend nila. 35% to 50% a year. Ownership stake less than 15%. So, there are also pros and cons of dealing with angel investors. So, mayroon din mga advantages. Ang mga advantages dito is angels engage in smaller financial deals. And second is angels prefer seed stage or startup stage. So, mas prefer nila yung mga startup business, startup firm. And third, angels invest in various industry sectors. So, they invest in several industry sectors. Angels are located in local geographic angel areas. Lastly is angels are genuinely interested in entrepreneurs. So, usually yung mga angels naman talaga mga investors. So, mas interesado sila sa mga entrepreneurs because they create new ventures. And Ang disadvantages naman ng angel investors is mga angels, nag-offer sila ng mga additional investment money. Ay, hindi pala sila nag-offer ng additional investment money. Second, ang angels cannot offer any national image. So, usually, hindi natin, di ba, tayo mga normal citizen, hindi natin usually alam kung sino yung mga investors ng isang company, mga big company, di ba? Because they prefer no national image. Third, angels lack importance contact for future leverage. So, wala silang contacts for future leverage. Fourth is angels may want some decision making with the entrepreneur. So, part sila ng decision making ng isang entrepreneur. So, bago mag-decide ng isang entrepreneur kailangan kumonsulta din siya sa kanyang mga investors. So, lastly, angels are getting more sophisticated in their investment decisions. So, very serious sila when it comes to their investment decisions. So, kasi sila mismo yung dapat, kapag nag-i-invest sila, dapat yung ini-invest nila is very successful dapat yun. Kasi hindi naman sila mag-i-invest lang to fail. Diba? Pag ganun ang pag-utak ng isang investor. Very sophisticated.